The sun hung low over Dustfall Ridge, painting the wooden storefronts with a worn, but Mary Alden felt anything but quiet as she stepped out of the general store with a bundle of supplies hugged to her chest, her red hair catching the dying light and her heart beating too fast from the tension she'd been trying to ignore all day. She had seen the three strangers earlier, lean men with dust-worn boots, narrow eyes, and the look of trouble plastered across their faces, and she had prayed they would move on. But fate was rarely so kind, and as soon as she stepped onto the street, they peeled away from the shadows like wolves spotting an injured deer, stalking her with the slow, deliberate swagger of men who believed no one would dare stand in their way. Mary tried to stay calm, her breath shaky, her hands tightening on the supplies as she walked faster toward the sheriff's office. But the sheriff was out of town chasing a cattle rustler, and these men surely knew it because they spread out, one stepping in front of her, one behind, and one circling to her left, boxing her in until she could feel the heat of their breath and the weight of their stares pressing against her ribs like a physical force. "Where you headed, sweetheart?" one drawled, sliding his finger under her chin, and the sight of his cracked fingernail made her stomach twist. But she swallowed her fear and looked away, fighting the tremor in her voice as she murmured, "I don't want trouble." The men chuckled darkly, the leader stepping closer, reaching for her arm as he sneered, "Oh, but trouble found you," and Mary's heart slammed against her ribs like a trapped bird, her mind racing for any escape, any trick, anything to put distance between her and these monsters. But before she could think of a single thing, the leader jerked her toward him, and the bundle of supplies tumbled onto the dust floor, exploding, cans rolling, her breath breaking into a panicked gasp as the other men laughed, their boots scraping closer. And then, cutting through that laughter like thunder across the canyon, came the sharp, fierce crack of a revolver. The men froze, Mary froze, everyone on the street froze, and through the golden haze of dust and fading sunlight, a black horse burst into the street like a storm wind, its hooves pounding, its mane whipping wild, and on its back rode a tall, hard-jawed cowboy with a long brown duster flaring behind him, and a smoking revolver already cocked in his hand. The bandits spun, grabbing for their guns, but he fired again, one warning shot into the dirt inches from their boots, forcing them to stumble back in shock. "Step away from her," the cowboy growled, his voice carrying the iron of a man who had seen enough evil in the world and refused to let it stand 1 inch closer to an innocent woman. The bandits hesitated, their courage shriveling under the unwavering aim of his pistol, and when they tried to scatter, the cowboy urged his horse forward in a blur of motion, reaching down with one strong arm, scooping Mary off the ground like she weighed nothing, and pulling her up onto the saddle in front of him. She gasped, clinging to him instinctively as the horse whipped around and thundered down the street, but the cowboy had already steered them into an alley, disappearing from sight before the bullets even hit the ground. Mary could feel his heartbeat steady against her back, hear the controlled breaths of a man who lived by danger and rode with death at his heels. And though she didn't yet know his name, she knew one thing for certain: this stranger had just risked everything to save her, and the world she thought she understood had just changed forever. And my friends, the horse galloped hard across the back trails of Dustfall Ridge as Mary clung to the cowboy's coat, her breath shaky and her mind spinning with the reality of how close she had come to disaster, while behind her she could feel the steady strength of the man who held the reins with one hand and kept his revolver in the other, ready to fire at the slightest flicker of danger. The wind whipped through her tied-back hair as she twisted, just enough to look up at him, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Who are you?" And he glanced down just long enough to answer, "Name's Coulter Hayes, and you were about 5 seconds from being taken by the worst scum in 3 counties," before guiding the horse down a sharp turn that led them into the shelter of a narrow ravine where the shadows stretched long and cool against the canyon walls. Mary swallowed hard, the truth hitting her like a blow. She had been alone. She shuddered, hugging the notebook she always carried, the one thing she hadn't dropped during the struggle, and Coulter noticed, his eyes softening as he slowed the horse to a walk and said gently, "You're safe now, but safety was fragile in the west, and as if the world wanted to remind them, the distant echo of horses behind them broke through the canyon air, the bandits giving chase, with a fury that promised they weren't riding just for revenge, they were riding to kill. Coulter cursed under his breath, quickly pulling Mary closer so she sat more securely against him, his arm locking around her waist as he roared the horse forward, kicking up dust that shimmered in the shafts of daylight piercing through the ravine ceiling. "Why are they after me?" she breathed, her voice breaking as fear crept back into her chest. But Coulter shook his head, eyes sharp ahead. "They ain't after you," he growled. "They're after what they think you've seen." And before Mary could ask what that meant, an explosion of gunfire cracked through the canyon behind them, bullets sparking off rock and whistling past them so close she could feel the air move. She screamed, gripping his arm, but Coulter leaned low over her, shielding her with his body as he fired blind shots behind them, guiding the horse with skill so precise it felt like he was reading the land itself, every dip, every rock, every escape route hidden to everyone but him. They rocketed out of the ravine, onto an open field where the tall grass shimmered in the blaze of the afternoon sun, and Coulter drove the horse hard toward a distant line of trees, knowing the forest edge would give them cover. Yet through the racing heartbeat in her ears she noticed something strange. Coulter wasn't panicked. He was focused, fierce, protective in a way she'd never seen, as if keeping her alive wasn't just a duty, it was personal. The bandits burst from the ravine moments later, gaining fast, and Mary felt tears prick her eyes as she whispered, "They won't stop." Coulter heard her, and without looking away from the path ahead, he reached down, took her trembling hand in his, and squeezed it with a promise carved from steel. "They will," he said steadily. "When I'm done with them." The trees approached, shadows lengthening, and Coulter slid the horse into the first line of cover, weaving between the trunks as bullets shredded branches behind them. Then, with a sharp pull of the reins, he swung the horse behind a fallen log, jumped off, pulled Mary down with him, and crouched low. "Stay behind me," he ordered, eyes narrowing. The bandits thundered closer. Coulter's jaw tightened, and in that moment, Mary understood the man who saved her wasn't just a passing cowboy. He was something far rarer, a guardian, a protector, a man willing to stand alone against danger so she could breathe another day. And if you've been pulled into this world of courage, danger, and unexpected love, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because more Western stories like this are coming, and you don't want to miss the next ride.